Hi, it's Serena here. Thanks for joining me today on my YouTube channel as summer winds down and you can see the phlox in full bloom, the goldenrod, which is really beautiful, and the trees across the lake are starting to turn a little bit. We're getting some color on them, so that means fall is on its way. I have to show you my favorite daylily. If there's such a thing as school bus yellow, this is it. It is like the deepest yellow, just such a beautiful flower. Well, I planted these in the planters on the porch just a few weeks ago, so I thought you might like to see how they've grown and how they look now. They need a little bit of grooming, but I love this one, this peach verbena. It's so beautiful. Look at all the colors on that one plant. And here's the fuchsia. And I've got window box full of dianthus and bright marigolds. And the hanging impatiens. I love that deep rose color. Isn't it pretty? We have some beautiful zinnias in full bloom here. Unfortunately, the storm that we got a couple days ago wreaked havoc on them, knocked them over, but look at that beautiful color. I love that. That's such a pretty color, that coral. In among my tomatoes here, these are sun gold tomatoes. They turn an orange and they are sweet. Some vines got away from me a little bit and I didn't have a chance to keep them running on the ground, so they climbed the tomato cages, but hopefully we will get some red curry squash out of these. It is a deep orange reddish squash, so I hope they can still form up in the air like this. I don't know. Look, it's still the plant is still trying to put on some flowers, if we can see that. I don't want to break it, but they're still trying to put on flowers. No bees in it right now. Some other bugs, but no bees, because it's cloudy. Sunflowers are blooming. Look at that color. Isn't that beautiful? I love those. So pretty. The bees have been on them too. They like them also. And in the background, we have corn. And it's just about ready. Almost. It's just turning brown. The tassels are just turning brown. You can see couple little beetles there. I don't know if you can see them or not. Probably isn't focusing. There we go. But those are going to be ready to eat soon. And that means fall is here. It's time to get all the firewood together and enjoy all the harvest that we've got, that I'm very grateful for. And there's one of the tall sunflowers that I love. We've got apples on the trees. And this is an early Mac, so they'll be ready just in a week or two. They're almost ready now, and that's good pie making apple right there. Yum! The cucumber vines are loaded, and we've been enjoying those cucumbers already. And look what I've been doing with my studio. I'm starting to put the siding up, and I've got to get hopping on it because we are starting to get into late summer. But with the weather cooling down now, I think I'll be okay. You see the tape flopping around on the door. We've had a terrible, terrible storm. Debbie came up the storm Debbie, Tropical Storm Debbie, came up the East Coast and hit us pretty bad too, and went into Canada from what I hear, but it flopped all the tape, so I have to remove that and get some decent window clings to keep the birds from smashing into the windows. This has been working so far, but we need something a little more pleasant to look at, don't you think? So I've been working a little bit in my Hanamulla watercolor sketchbook. This is like a 6x6 square. I love these square formats. They're so nice. But I was working on kind of a moody picture here, and I thought I would make something similar on this side too. So let's start. I'll go ahead, and I've got my palette here, my messy palette. This is my cheapy plastic messy palette. You know, I have other palettes, but I use this one the most. Just funny, but I do. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and zoom out a little bit so you can see what I'm doing with, maybe I can move the palette over here and you can see what I'm doing a little bit and follow along with me. Okay, so the first thing I did, I wet my palette a little bit with the same kind of color tones that I used in the picture on the left. And so I'm going to go ahead and give it just a little bit of a little tinted color where I want the land to go. And I want to kind of make this kind of a swampy looking picture here. Kind of a little swampy area. But I want it to be foggy like it is on the other side here. So I'm just going to get a little bit of almost like a waterway here, but it's going to be more of a foggy type of look because I want it to be kind of spooky, a little bit spooky. So I've got those two there. I'm going to have one more patch of land just right over here. Just right. See how light it is? You can hardly see. Got some spots on the paper because I splattered a little for the other painting, so I suppose I'll do that here too. But I want to kind of just keep this very, very soft at the edges so you don't really even see that there's an edge there, but I don't want to join them. I'm not joining the land masses. And what I'm going to do is just build this up a little bit. Now that I've got this, I'm going to just drop in some color here and there just to make it a little bit darker. And that's what I did with the other one too. I just let these colors blend in while the paint is wet. This one isn't very wet, is it? I think I'm going to see if I can wet that a little more. That's not really what I wanted to do because I didn't want that to be all one color. But it's odd because it's a very humid day today. I think I didn't get that as wet as I wanted. Let's see, dry it a little bit because I don't want that all the same color. And I do want to get some of the similar moody colors in there. Just drop those in here and there. Just get them going there. A lot of this is experimenting. You know, when you're using your sketchbook, you're kind of experimenting. It's not a finished painting, it's just for fun. Now, the other painting that I did see on YouTube. I saw someone do it on YouTube. So it is kind of a copy. I wish I would have gotten her name because I like to give credit where credit is due. And of course, I didn't write her name down. I just looked at it, I did it, and then I went on to the next thing. So I didn't keep her name. But she said she actually got inspired by someone else also. So it's a video after a video after a video, I think. So if anybody knows who the original artist is, let me know, because I would like to give them credit. I don't like to take credit. So let me go ahead and add a little bit more. I had some Payne's Gray going on in the other one. So I'm going to take some of the Payne's Gray here and dab that in a little bit. Dab that in. See how that makes it kind of more, of course, bluish and dark, but it gives more of a mysterious kind of look to it. There we go. Okay, like that. And just let it flow around. Sometimes that's the fun of watercolors, just to let it do what it's doing. Let it do its thing. Let's see, that's kind of, I want to let that dry a little bit and maybe dab some more in there because it's kind of blending too much. I don't want it blending that much, so I'm getting a more concentrated bit of color in here. And maybe I'll add some more a little later on. But I want kind of a foggy look to the edges there. So I'm going to blend it out a little bit later on. But right now I want to add a little bit more color to it. I think, see, I had some yellow going on in the other one. It's like an ochre, kind of, or a lemon ochre. Lemon and ochre, but I can do with an ochre and just kind of just blend that in, step that in a little bit. The ochre does have a little bit of white to it, so it's not completely a transparent color, but I want to have some unity between the two pages is what I'm looking for. Oops, that's turning a little muddy. So I'm going to leave that as it is for now and let this part dry. What I'd like to do is get some something going on in the sky and get this to be a little moody too. Almost like a winter sky. Almost like that. So let's see if we can do that. Gonna wet that up real good. I really like this paper. This is really nice, nice paper to work on this sketchbook. So, whoops, I'm getting a little bead on the edge there. I don't want it rolling off the edge. But let me go ahead and start with some light purple. Just get a little moodiness going on here. Just a few streaks across. And this is going to spread across the page a little bit as it blends. And I'll have some on the edges here. I just want to kind of frame it in a little bit so you see it in the background. And maybe I can pull up some of that Payne's Gray as well. Let me get a few more little things of color in there where I've already got them. Make it a little darker. And let me see if I can get some Payne's Gray in there. Just a little bit. Not a whole lot, but just to add another little dimension to it. I don't even want it to look really like clouds, more like just the background. So I'll just work on that a little bit, not make it too, gotta make them kind of level. I don't want them too, but I don't see it starting to dry there. I don't want to go where it's dry. I don't want to do that. So I'm gonna get rid of that. But maybe I should just leave well enough alone because that will give me enough of a kind of hint to it. a hint to the gloominess. Maybe a little bit. I want to play a little more with it. I can't leave well enough alone. Do you do that with your paintings too? But this is what's fun. It's the experimenting. And you don't know what you're going to get. You don't know what's going to happen. It's just fun. Lots of fun. All right, I'm going to get some of that Payne's Gray in there because I want that bluish. This is a very nice Payne's Gray. This is a Schmenke Colors I'm working with. And I've always liked their Payne's Gray. It is a bluish, as you see. It's got that nice color to it. It's really more blue than gray, I would say, because it's got that bluish. But I really do like it. It's just nice. Very nice. Get some of that in there. All right, whoops. Well, clouds can look like that too. That's a little bit too obvious. I want it blending. I don't want it with such hard edges. But I don't want cauliflower either, so I gotta be careful what I'm doing here. Because, you know, you can do that very easily with watercolor. And that kind of really ruins it. Gotta be careful there. And I got a little bit there too. Blend that out a little bit. Okay, let's leave well enough alone with that. I do want to add, while I've got this stage going on, a little bit of a pale yellow. And my yellow is muddy. I usually don't do this, but my yellow is very muddy. And I'm going to put that right around there, just to have like a winter sun, and let that blend out. I don't want it too obvious. That looks a little too bright. I should muddy that down with, I don't know, not really muddy it down, but give it a little bit more of a, now it's not really looking like a circle, but that's okay. Leave it as is. Don't mess with it. It's hard to know when to stop on these things. It really is. See, I'm missing this moodiness here. This has to be blended. And I do want to blend it, but I don't want a cauliflower edge to it, which it's got already. But so if I can kind of take some of this out, just kind of get this wet and take some of that edge out of there and kind of just blend it on up like that. Take that out. It is staining a little bit. See, I want to get that. That's what I want to get, that hard edge. Scrub that right out. I don't want to scrub it in the paper. Make the paper all. Yeah, see, I didn't quite capture what I had over there. This is a little bit too sharp of an edge. I didn't want a sharp edge. But this is what, you know, experimenting is like. You have to play around with it a little bit. Yeah, I want the same thing there. Not a sharp edge. I want to get rid of that sharp edge on the top. Let it blend in a little bit up there. Maybe I need to add more water and just kind of, it's just too sharp. I could add more paint, which is kind of asking for it, but trying to fix watercolor is not easy. It's not the easiest thing. Now, that doesn't look like what I wanted to make it look like. Oh well, we'll see how it goes a little further down. The first one that I did not do on camera, of course, came out perfectly the way I wanted it to. Isn't that the way it goes? And if this is so horrible, and it's just not what I want, I'll just turn the page and start over and just not post this one. And this will be my practice. Yeah, I just want to get some of that out of there, but I don't want it off. I don't want such a clear edge. I think I didn't bring it up enough. I think I didn't. I had to join it up enough to the other colors, and I didn't do that. See, it's just kind of, that's more of a blend on up. This is still not where I want it to be. I want these all kind of blending together. All blending together. That helps a little bit. If I pull it up, then you don't see such a sharp edge. Oh, I'm getting cauliflower there. Look at that. I don't think you can really save that without like wetting the whole thing. And then you get mud. But it is what it is. Let's let that dry and we'll see what happens. The sun is totally bleeding in there. I didn't wait long enough. So that's a disaster too. Oh well. Let's let it dry for a while. All right, so that's dry now. Let's take a look and see what I can add to this to kind of salvage it. I think I didn't do a very good job of it, but I'm going to go ahead and continue. It has a unity because I've used similar colors to the opposite page, but the sky does not match. So, what are you going to do? You know, it's a sketchbook. So here I'm going to mimic what I have on this side, where I've got like just the faintest hints of trees or brush and no real color to it. But I'm just going to go ahead and make some things out here that look like they are part of the trees or part of the land back here, and just kind of coming out of the swampy area. I don't want them too dark. I just want to give a hint, just a hint that they look like trees. And I'm going to have them come out at different lengths so it looks like there's fog on the ground, but I don't want them too tall either, because they're just in the background. They're kind of not going to be very obvious. And I do want to put a little bit of detail in the, or a little bit of, a lot of branches on them, let's say, so that it looks like they are trees rather than bushes. Oh, that's a little wet. You've got to watch your water on this because you don't want it too wet. If it gets wet, it's hard to do a fine line. Of course, you can use a finer brush, which this is just a Nick Pro. This is number 1. It's just a cheap, this is a cheapy brush. I'm finding there's a lot of good brushes on Amazon and even places like Temu and so forth. Now here we're getting closer, so I'm going to make it a little darker, a little bit darker as we get to the forefront, because we want it to be more obvious. Okay, so a little bit more obvious and a little bit bigger. A little bit bigger here. Just go ahead and, practice these things. You want to just kind of practice these things on a separate piece of paper, so that when you do something like this, you can just go. You don't have to fuss over, oh, it doesn't look right and it looks funny, and I don't care. It's a sketchbook. See, but I want to kind of give it a little bit darker presence than the other one. Now I do want, let's see, put one sideways, because the trees do grow sideways. You do have things coming out sideways. And I do want to make the trunks a little bit wider, so I'm going to do that in a minute. And you have branches that bend down and bend over, and branches that are very creaky looking, which I should do for the whole tree, not just the part, that one part. But what you don't want to do is have a really fat branch up there and then it just doesn't come down to here. So you kind of have to make these wide too. Otherwise it'll look really funny. Looks funny anyway. And I want to keep that darker color. I don't want it to fade out too much. Get this one going. I have another tree here. And these trees in the distance don't have much color to them. It's kind of a foggy scene. Makes it a little more believable when you have a sun that looks like that. It's not quite very bright. You can't tell. The clouds have no definition to them. They're there. They're in the sky, but they don't have a lot of definition. See how the darkness pulls it forward. I don't want to have that quick transition there. I've got to kind of make it fade in a little more so that it's not dark and then it fades out. But let's get another one in here, maybe over on this side. Make sure I can still see it here. I have a tendency to go off the page, which I don't want to do. I'm always doing that. I'm sorry about that. That's just my camera set up. Just something like that. Just giving hints of branches and bare branches. It would do a lot better if I had a really thin brush here. You can see that. But this kind of gives a little bit of a distance there. Now I'm going to make this a little darker, and I'm going to add a little more green to it. I should actually maybe make a little orange, but put a little green in there and have some, oops, an odd hair there. Have some odd, we're going to have that really thin. Just have some odd things going on here. Make it look a little bit like there's bushes here, maybe in the front. Not all the same, not all on the same plane. Just have some lower than others, some higher. As you go back, of course, you don't want to have too much detail there. And you don't want them very big, you want them smaller. Okay, so now you can see the depth that's created with that a little bit. Let me get a little bit more dark in here. And I think I should just play around with some, without getting some large trees, just some little bushes maybe. Some bush shapes. So they'll be like, kind of like this. Something like this. Just hints of something up front. Not too pronounced, but just kind of there. And always having something in threes helps. It tricks the eye, it makes it more harmonious. It's not like odd two things out. I don't want this to be very obvious that it's a piece of land so much, but I do want some grasses up here. So I'm going to have some grasses growing out of here. So you can see that this is like a more of a three-dimensional three-dimensional landscape. Ooh, that's too watery. I want it darker, but not watery. I'm going to put some dark things in here. Maybe that's a little too dark. Maybe that's a little too dark. Let's get a little more water on there. In fact, see, you can fix something like that right if you do it right away. If you wait, forget it. But just some grass is hinting here. Doesn't have to be. And you don't even know if the land is ending or not. It kind of doesn't really give you a lot of definition there. But I think I'm going to leave it at that. I'm not totally happy with it. It's okay, but it's different. It's different. It kind of goes with the other one. And it was just a quick thing to play around with, maybe give you an idea of something to do. I certainly learned what I did wrong, and that's the purpose of a sketchbook. So now I know when I put those islands in, I'm going to continue the pale color all the way up like I did on this one. I continued the pale color all the way up so it fades out completely gradually, and you don't even know where the land begins and mountain begins and where the sky is. So I wanted to get a similar look on this one. I didn't, but this gives me an idea of what I need to do a little better next time. Well, in fact, let me see if I can see. I can't resist like playing with this. It's probably still too wet to do this with, but if I add some of these, it might make it more, give it more depth, because these are kind of in the forefront, and that kind of brings it forward. If you have one kind of value, in your painting, and even if it's a winter scene, a gloomy winter scene like this with not a lot of light and contrast with shadows, it will help if you have that dark value in front. And that kind of pulled it up a little bit. That helped. So let me see if I can get the grasses going like that too. I don't want to make it look like there's too many blades of grass, but even just to bring a few in, just a few little, see how that makes a difference? Just a few little blades there. It just kind of brings that forward a little bit more. Well, this video isn't over quite yet, because this has been bothering me, that the work came out the way it did. It's not terribly horrible, but there are things I could fix. And one thing I'm very glad of is that I dated the old piece. That was done June 30th. This one was probably 3 weeks ago, and we are already into August 11th, I believe. So I'm going to date it. I should have dated it when I finished it, but I'm not quite done yet. And the fact that it bothered me made me really think about sketchbooks and their usefulness to us. Now, we don't need to always have perfect pictures or perfect drawings, paintings in our sketchbooks. They're for swatching, they're for ideas, they're for jotting down notes, they're for all kinds of things. There's all kinds of sketchbooks you can have. But for this particular painting, I wanted it more of a finished painting than an idea keeper. So what I'm thinking of is using my sketchbook, or using this particular painting in the sketchbook, as a jump-off point to learn from, so that I don't just paint it and put it away, but that I actually take it a step further. And when I sat down and really looked at it, I came up with a couple of ideas here that I'm going to go over with you and see if you agree with some of the corrections or improvements that I could make. So I wanted it to look that way, like a kind of a spooky, moody, swampy kind of thing, kind of area. But I can't give it a whole lot of color because of that. I want to keep the tones muted. But what I can do is to include more dark values, and that will kind of give it more depth without really ruining the mood of the painting. So if I add some more darkness or dark colors here, that might help it a little bit to give it a little bit of dimension. Also, I know when I painted it, I didn't extend the wash all the way up. Like I did on this one, I kind of extended the wash, it fades out. It kind of fades out way up into water. You don't even see where the transition is. Here, you're kind of seeing that break. It's kind of very choppy and not very smooth, and that bothered me. So I thought, well, you know what? I've got these kind of choppy cauliflower kind of things going on here. And you know what? If you can't erase it, I tried to erase it a little bit, as you saw a little earlier, but if you can't erase it, why not make it a tree line, you know, a hill with a tree line? That would make it more intentional and make it look like I'm supposed to have that effect instead of it being a mistake. The other thing I thought of on this was, do you see how this looks a little bit separate from this section, as far as it looks almost like a stream or a creek or something? And I thought, why not go with that accident? If it looks like a stream, make it look like a stream. Carry down some of the reflections. I could do that. I could carry down the reflections of the trees, carry down the reflection of the sun, and kind of actually make it like a stream instead of a little accident. So there's a lot of things you can learn from your paintings once you finish them. Don't just finish them and say, oh, well, it didn't come out as, you know, like I thought it would or like I wanted it to, and then just flip the page and go on to the next one. Because you really are missing that opportunity to learn from it and grow from it and maybe learn how to correct some mistakes. So what I thought I would do is to actually correct some of these mistakes and see if I can make this one better. I didn't know whether I should do it on this or take a separate piece of paper and maybe cut that out and then tape it in later to see the difference between this and that. And I think I'm going to do that because, number one, I might ruin this even more. There's always the chance that with watercolor especially that you go too far and you ruin it. So I'm going to do it on a different sheet of paper. I have here some Fabriano Artistico cotton watercolor paper, hot pressed, that is already cordoned off. And I thought, even though this doesn't really fit in the sketchbook, I guess I could fit it that way. I'll start a new one on here, similar to this, and see if I can come up with some corrections that I was talking about. Make that front a little darker, add a little reflection there, and some other things. So let's see, come along with me and see what I can do with this as far as maybe making it better. Okay, so what I want to start with is the sky. I'm going to actually just come in here and lay a wash down and just get that whole section wet. It's not, I should have maybe a bigger brush, but it's not that big an area that I'm going to have problems. It's a little hard to see because I don't have any color on it yet. But I'm using a number 8 Jackson's Icon brush, and I just want to make sure I got enough water on there. Okay, and I'm going to use colors similar to the ones I had before. So kind of moody, kind of cloudy a little bit. I'm just going to drop some color in there. And I don't know, I probably should leave the space for the sun. But I'm going to extend this down a little bit. I want to go ahead and extend it down. I don't want it too much of the sky to be very blue. I want it to be a little grayish in there. Get some of that gray in there. Just kind of let that play around a little bit. I did have, that's a little blue, but I know it'll dry a little lighter. Let's see if I can get some Payne's gray in there. That might be something I'm looking more toward. This one's a little bit of a bluish Payne's gray, but you can still see that kind of grayish tone to it. Just want to get that a little moody there. Let that do its job there. Let that move around. Maybe add a little of that purple, because I have purple in this one too. Let me get some of that in there. That's a little dark. Just a little bit with the blues there. Get that in there, just to add some color. And you know, each one of these each painting you do is going to come out a little different. It's not always going to be the way you want it to be. You know, you can't really control watercolor so easily. You want to, but you can't always do it. So I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit in here. I don't want to add too much because I don't want it to get too, but I want to kind of blend those in. I don't want them like spotty like that. That's too spotty. Okay, so I think that's going to be good. Now I want to get that sun in there. How am I going to do that? I've got to switch to a very small brush, and I want to see if I can get a little bit of a muted sun in there. Not too bright. Just drop a little bit in there. This is probably what I should have done before. Just drop it in there. And I'm actually using a yellow ochre on this, so it's not quite so, oh, that's bright, that's too much. So you overdo it. Just going to leave it like that, I think. That's kind of bright, but that's okay. And I'll let that go ahead and dry, and I'll come back to this. Okay, so this is dry. What I'm going to do now is get some of the land masses in here, but I'm going to move the tint all the way up, which is what I didn't do before. It abruptly cut off, and that's how I got those cauliflower things in there. So I'm going to mix some green up. I have some on my palette still from the other. It's a little greenish. It's a little bit of sap green, a little brownish to it. But I'm going to move it all the way up and get some of those land masses in there. That's a little bit dark, but what I'll do, without letting them dry, I do want to get them in like this and just bring it all the way up. Kind of bring that all the way over here. And carry these all the way up. Carry that all the way up. So it's not a like this. Just carry it all the way up. This is just water I'm using, just plain water. I'm going right over my, trying not to wet it too much. I don't want to get it too reactivated, you know what I mean? But just to bring it up without having any clear, add a little more there so it's kind of fading up, faded up. I don't want it to get a very clear delineation. Just kind of bring it right up there. Like that. That's what I didn't do last time. And then I can darken this up. That doesn't matter. That'll kind of blend in as we go along. Like that. Just let that kind of blend right in there so you don't know where the land starts or ends. Maybe fix this up a little bit here. There. I almost should leave that swampy area alone. Now if I wanted to, I could darken the sky a little bit, which I think I'm going to do. Just add a little bit more of these darker indigo colors here in the corners. Not too much though, I don't want any cauliflower going on. Just darken that up. I don't want to, I gotta be careful because it seems like it's starting to dry a little bit. I don't want to get that kind of cauliflower going on there. I gotta watch that. In fact, I might, do I want to mess with it? Maybe blend it a little, dry my brush off and blend it a little. Blend it, there we go. So it's not like a shock, too much of a shock. These colors are a little bit different than the others. I had a little more purple in the other, but that's okay. I think what I did in the other one was that I stopped before it was really finished. I kind of got tired of working on it, and I stopped. And I think that's one of the things that we tend to do. We get to that kind of ugly phase, and we just say, okay, that's it, I'm done. And we put it aside and move on to another page. We either get bored with it or we think there's no hope for it and we just kind of say, no, that's it. All right, this thing is bothering me here. I don't know if that's a concentration of paint or dirt. I think it's a concentration of paint there. Okay. We'll let this dry and we'll move on to the next step later. Okay. Sorry about that. It doesn't really help that the sun is kind of going in and out a little bit. But we're going to go ahead and, looks like in fact a storm is brewing here. I'm going to go ahead and get these land masses a little bit more defined. I have some yellow ochre on this, and I think I'm going to pull that in too. So I'm just going to go ahead and maybe have some bits here. Doesn't matter if the stuff in front is very dark. That, in fact, I kind of want it a little dark. But I'm going to add some Payne's gray here too, or that bluish gray from the sky. Match that up a little bit with some Payne's gray. Blob that in. Mix that, let that mix in there. That's a little bit too blue. Maybe I want that a little grayer, a little gray-green. It looks like it's already drying there. That tan I put above it, that yellow ochre. Kind of mix that in again. What is that? Is that the page pilling up? It shouldn't be. No, I think that's dirt in my paint. Oh, that's terrible. Gotta get that out of there. That's gonna bug me. All right, there we go. Let me see if I can kind of soften that up a little bit, because I don't want it quite so harsh. That's really harsh there. I'm going to have to do something with that. Get a little more of that in there. I don't know if I'm making it any better than the other one or worse. It doesn't seem to be doing very much better. Let's see if I can just kind of leave it like that. I mean, it's still going to be spooky a little bit and misty, but it just won't be so. And now I'm getting this wet again, and I don't necessarily want to get a cauliflower effect going on here. But if I don't do the whole thing, that's what I'm going to get. That's not really what I wanted to do, is to wet it all. But I do want this to be like gradual. I don't want it to be, see, like little bits in the background. Like you don't quite know where it begins and ends. Like that. Like that. That's perfect. That's exactly what I want. Okay, now don't mess with it. Leave it alone. Stop playing with it. Okay, I'm going to leave it as is, and we'll see what we can get out of this. Okay, so this one's relatively dry. It's still a little wrinkly underneath, but that's okay. I think what I'm going to do, for the sake of making this video a little shorter, and because we're getting some cloudy weather here, I'm going to just go ahead and turn the video off and then paint, and then come back and show you what I've done. So hopefully you won't mind not seeing the whole thing, but I'm afraid the video is getting a little long. Okay, so I still have a wet painting here, but I wanted you to see at this point how adding just a few of those darker values brought it out a little bit more as far as like distance. And I also played around a little bit with enhancing this part and kind of adding the reflections, making it look like that was a body of water. So when you're using your sketchbooks, don't forget to take it a step further and step back and look at your work later on, see what it is that you don't like about it, what you might improve, and then try to make another painting just like it using those ideas that you come up with to improve it. At least you'll learn a little bit more than if you just make the painting and move on to another one. So that was my point today, to go back on this painting and do a little bit more and see what I could come up with. I don't know if it's so much better. This part over here needs a little bit more work, so I'm probably not quite done, but I wanted to end it at this point just so that you could see what I've gotten so far, and I think this is enough of an example to show you what I meant. So thank you so much for joining me today. Don't forget to hit that like button if you like the video, and I'll bring you more like it. Hit the thumbs up and subscribe if you are not a subscriber already. If you are, thank you so much for being a loyal subscriber and watching my videos. Take care and be creative.